I woke up to the scream of a chainsaw tearing through my backyard at 6 a.m., a sound that hit like a punch to the gut. Stumbling out of bed, I yanked open the blinds and froze. There they were, two guys in orange vests hacking away at my rose garden, the one my mom and I spent years perfecting. Petals were flying, branches snapping, and standing there like a general overseeing a battlefield was Barb Henderson, the HOA president from hell, clutching her tablet like it was the Constitution. Her smug grin said it all. She wasn't just pruning my roses, she was gutting my soul. Violation of aesthetic standards, she called out when she saw me, her voice dripping with fake pity. I stood there in my boxers, barefoot on the cold patio, watching them shred the Midnight Star, a one-of-a-kind rose my mom bred herself, while Barb waved a flimsy official notice and threatened a $500 fine if I got in the way. I'm a guy who spent years chasing financial crooks through spreadsheets and server logs, but right then, I wanted to chuck her tablet into the next county. Instead, I clenched my fists, my brain already spinning. Barb had no idea who she was messing with, but she was about to find out. Let me back up. My name's Daniel Carter, Den to anyone who's not trying to sell me something. I'm 40, a former financial crimes investigator turned freelance cybersecurity consultant, which means I spend my days untangling digital messes from the comfort of my home office. 2 years ago, I moved into Sunny Hills Estates, a cookie-cutter suburban neighborhood just outside Raleigh, North Carolina. Picture-perfect lawns, white picket fences, and enough HOA rules to choke a lawyer. I wasn't looking for much, just a quiet place to work, sip coffee on my porch, and tend to the rose garden my mom left me when she passed. That garden wasn't just a hobby, it was her legacy, my anchor, the one thing that kept me grounded after she was gone. The house itself was my grandma's, a cozy 2-story with creaky floors and a wraparound porch that smelled like pine in the summer. I sank every penny I had into fixing it up. New roof, fresh paint, the works, because I wanted it to be mine, a place where I could finally put down roots after years of chasing cases across the country. The rose garden out back was the heart of it all. Mom and I used to spend hours there, her teaching me how to prune, graft, and coax life out of stubborn soil. She'd laugh and say, "Den, roses are like people. Give 'em patience, and they'll surprise you." The Midnight Star was her pride and joy, a deep purple bloom she'd spent a decade perfecting. It was the only one of its kind, irreplaceable, like a piece of her still standing in that garden. Every time I watered it, I could hear her voice, see her smile. That's what Barb was shredding, and she didn't even blink. When I moved in, I figured the HOA was just a bunch of busybodies obsessed with mailbox colors and grass height. Annoying, sure, but manageable. I dealt with worse, crooked CEOs, money launderers, you name it. How bad could a neighborhood association be? Famous last words. The first few months were fine. Neighbors waved, kids rode bikes, and the only drama was Mrs. Jenkins's yappy dog. I kept to myself, worked my contracts, and spent evenings in the garden, clipping roses and thinking about Mom. I thought I'd found peace. Then Barb Henderson slithered into the picture, and I realized peace in Sunny Hills came with a catch, one named Barb, armed with a rulebook and a vendetta. It all started with a letter that looked too fancy to be anything but trouble. I found it stuffed in my mailbox on a Saturday morning, a crisp white envelope with the Sunny Hills Estates HOA logo embossed in gold, like they thought they were the IRS or something. Inside was a typed notice signed by none other than Barb Henderson, our HOA president and self-appointed queen of suburbia. The letter claimed my rose garden, my mom's rose garden, was in violation of community aesthetic standards. Apparently, the bushes were excessively tall and obstructing neighbor visibility, which was news to me considering nobody had complained in the 2 years I'd lived here. The demand? Trim every rose to 18 inches by the end of the week or cough up a $200 fine. 18 inches. That wasn't a haircut, that was a death sentence for the Midnight Star, the one-of-a-kind purple rose my mom spent a decade perfecting. I stood there on my porch, coffee mug in hand, rereading the thing like it might confess to being a prank. Barb had walked by my garden dozens of times, even tossed me a fake smile once when I first moved in. This wasn't about standards. This was Barb swinging her HOA scepter, seeing if I'd flinch. I'm not the guy who charges into a fight half-cocked. I've spent years tracking financial crooks through bank records and server logs. Patience is my thing. You don't catch a fox by yelling at it, you set a trap. So I went inside, sat at my kitchen table, and typed up a response. Polite, professional, the kind of email you'd expect from a guy who knows how to play nice. I explained the rose's history, rare varieties, sentimental value, my mom's legacy. I even offered to put up a low fence if visibility was really the problem. Figured I'd give Barb an out, let her feel like she won without torching my garden. I hit send and waited, thinking maybe she'd see reason. Yeah, right. 4 days later, another envelope showed up. Same gold logo, same smug vibe. My email was acknowledged, but the violation stood. The fine was now $250 for failure to comply, and I had 48 hours to correct the issue or face escalated measures. I snorted, not because it was funny, but because Barb actually thought she could scare a guy who'd stared down money launderers with offshore accounts. She was poking a bear with a stick, and I was already sharpening my claws. Barb didn't just turn up the heat, she dropped a flamethrower. A week after her $250 fine landed in my mailbox, I came home from a quick run to the hardware store and stopped dead in my driveway. My backyard looked like a war zone. My rose garden, the one my mom and I had poured our hearts into, was gone. Not trimmed, not pruned, annihilated. Every bush had been sawed to the ground, roots torn up, petals scattered like ashes across the dirt. The midnight star, that one-of-a-kind purple rose my mom spent a decade breeding, was reduced to a pile of mangled branches stuffed into a city trash bin by the curb. 2 guys in orange vests were tossing their chainsaws into a truck, and there was Barb Henderson standing on my lawn like a dictator in a pantsuit, her tablet glowing with some HOA rulebook nonsense. "Community standards enforced," she said when she spotted me, her smile so smug it could have curdled milk. "You were warned, Mr. Carter. Consider this a courtesy." Courtesy? I felt my blood boil, the kind of anger that makes your hands shake. "You destroyed my mom's roses," I yelled, my voice cracking in a way I hadn't heard since I was a teenager. Barb didn't even blink. She just tapped her tablet and said, "Your garden was a public nuisance. I saved you from more fines. You're welcome." Saved me. She'd gutted the one thing tying me to my mom, and she was acting like she'd done me a favor. I wanted to snatch that tablet and frisbee it into her perfectly manicured hedges, but I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who took down a Ponzi scheme by tracing a single wire transfer through 3 continents. I don't lose my cool, I get even. So I pulled out my phone and started snapping photos, the workers, the wreckage, Barb's self-satisfied smirk. She laughed like she thought I was just some hothead throwing a fit. Big mistake. The next morning, the fines hit like a tsunami. 3 notices in my mailbox, totaling $2,000 for resisting HOA directives, disrupting community harmony, and, get this, maintaining an unsightly property. Unsightly. My backyard was now a barren patch of dirt, but somehow I was the eyesore. Then came the neighborhood fallout. Barb had been working overtime. At the local coffee shop, folks I'd nodded to for years started dodging my gaze. Mrs. Jenkins, the lady with the yappy dog, muttered "troublemaker" to her friend as I walked by. Someone taped a note to my car. "Play by the rules or get out." Barb wasn't just coming for my garden. She was turning Sunny Hills into her personal fiefdom, with me as the village pariah. It hurt, I won't lie. I'd picked this place to build a quiet life, and now I was the guy kids crossed the street to avoid. The worst part came that night, when I was out back, sifting through the dirt where the midnight star used to stand. I found a single broken stem in the trash bin, its purple petals crushed but still holding that faint, sweet scent. I held it in my hands, and it hit me like a freight train. The memory of Mom kneeling in that garden, humming some old jazz tune, teaching me how to prune just right. That rose wasn't just a plant. It was her laugh, her patience, her stubborn belief that beauty could grow anywhere. Barb hadn't just trashed my yard. She'd ripped out a piece of my mom, and she'd done it with a smile. I sat there, stem in hand, my throat tight, and made a promise. Barb thought she'd broken me. She thought I'd pay her fines or pack my bags. But I'd spent my career dismantling crooks who thought they were untouchable, and Barb Henderson was about to find out what happens when you push a guy like me too far. I'm not the kind of guy who punches walls or picks fights in the street. I spent years untangling financial scams with nothing but a laptop and a knack for spotting lies, so I figured I could handle Barb Henderson with a cool head and a paper trail. After she turned my mom's rose garden into a landfill and slapped me with $2,000 in fines, I decided to play by the rules. Her rules, at least for now. If Barb wanted to treat Sunny Hills like her personal kingdom, I'd try the diplomatic route first. Spoiler alert, it went about as well as you'd expect. My first move was to file a formal complaint with the HOA board. I spent hours drafting a letter, laying out the facts like I was building a case for court. I included photos of the destroyed garden, copies of Barb's violation notices, and a detailed explanation of the midnight star's value, sentimental and botanical. I even cited the HOA bylaws, which, let me tell you, read like they were written by a lawyer with a grudge. Section 4.2 clearly stated that no landscaping could be altered without a homeowner's consent unless it posed an immediate safety hazard. A rosebush taller than Barb's ego didn't exactly qualify. I emailed the complaint to the board and requested a hearing at the next HOA meeting. I thought naively that the other board members might see Barb's stunt for what it was, a power trip. 2 days later, I got a reply from Barb herself. because of course she was the one screening complaints. "Your request is denied," it read. "Only authorized homeowners may appeal decisions, and your non-compliance revokes that privilege." Non-compliance. She'd shredded my garden, and I was the rule breaker. I stared at the email, half expecting it to sign off with "Love, your supreme leader Barb." Next, I called up a lawyer friend, Tom, who owed me a favor from a case I'd helped him crack back in my investigator days. Over coffee at a diner downtown, I laid out the whole mess. Barb's notices, the garden massacre, the fines piling up like junk mail. Tom leaned back, sipping his latte, and gave me the bad news. "HOAs are like mini-dictatorships," he said. "The bylaws give them way too much power, and yours are a mess, vague enough for Barb to twist however she wants. You could sue, but it'll cost you 10 grand just to start, and it'll drag on for years." I asked if I had any shot at a quick injunction to stop the fines. He shook his head. "Not unless you've got proof Barb's breaking the law, and even then, judges hate HOA cases. Too much paperwork." I left the diner $15 poorer and no closer to a solution, but Tom's words stuck with me. Proof. That was my wheelhouse. My last attempt was a face-to-face with Barb. I know, about as smart as negotiating with a rattlesnake, but I figured I'd give her one chance to back off before I went full cyber sleuth. I caught her at the HOA office, a converted garage behind the community clubhouse, decked out with fake plants and inspirational posters about community spirit. Barb sat behind a desk, her tablet propped up like a throne. I kept it civil, offering a compromise. I'd replant the garden to meet her precious standards, even pay half the fines if she'd drop the rest and call off her crusade. I thought maybe appealing to her wallet would work where reason failed. Barb leaned back, her smile sharp enough to cut steel, and said, "Mr. Carter, rules are rules. If you can't respect our community's values, perhaps you'd be happier elsewhere." Elsewhere. She wasn't even pretending anymore. She wanted me gone. I walked out, her words echoing in my head, and realized diplomacy was dead. Barb wasn't just flexing power, she was waging war. The HOA's response didn't stop there. A week later, I got a new notice, this one threatening a lien on my house if I didn't pay the $2,000 by the end of the month. At the monthly HOA meeting, which I forced myself to attend, Barb took the stage like a politician running for re-election. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. "Certain residents," she said, her eyes flicking my way, "threaten our neighborhood's harmony with their selfish disregard for rules." The room murmured, and I felt every stare like a dart. Mrs. Jenkins, sitting 2 rows up, nodded like Barb was preaching gospel. I sat there, jaw tight, my laptop burning a hole in my bag. Barb thought she'd boxed me in, but she'd just lit a fuse. I'm a patient guy, but patience doesn't mean surrender. Every smug word she spoke was another reason to dig deeper, and I was already itching to crack open her digital closet and see what skeletons fell out. Barb's war on my rose garden wasn't just a power trip, it was a cover-up, and I stumbled onto it by doing what I do best, following the digital breadcrumbs. After my attempts to reason with her crashed and burned, I decided to stop playing nice and start playing smart. I'm a cybersecurity guy. I've cracked open offshore accounts and traced money laundering schemes through layers of encryption. If Barb thought she could hide behind her HOA throne, she was about to get a lesson in why you don't mess with a guy who knows his way around a server. Late one night, fueled by black coffee and a grudge, I started digging into the contractor who'd turned my mom's Midnight Star into mulch. Something about those guys in orange vests felt off, too quick, too sloppy, like they were covering tracks instead of clearing a garden. I didn't have much to go on, just the name on their truck, Greenway Landscaping. A quick search pulled up a barebones website and a P.O. box in Raleigh, but no license number, no client reviews, nothing you'd expect from a legit outfit. That raised a flag. So I did what any self-respecting ex-investigator would do. I poked around their digital footprint. It wasn't hard to find the email address listed in their HOA contract, which Barb had conveniently attached to one of her violation notices. Using a few tricks I'd picked up in my less savory cases, I got into their inbox. I know, not exactly legal, but neither was shredding my property without a permit. What I found hit me like a sucker punch. A string of emails between Greenway's owner and Barb, laying out a deal that had nothing to do with community standards. Barb had sold a chunk of land behind my house, land that technically belonged to the neighborhood, to a developer planning to build a strip mall. My rose garden, it turned out, was a problem because it sat on a corner of my lot that overlapped the access route for their construction equipment. The emails were crystal clear. Barb had ordered the garden destroyed to clear the path and pressure me into selling my house, which was the last holdout blocking the deal. She'd even bragged about it, writing, "Carter's too stubborn to move, but he'll crack once the fines hit his wallet." The kicker? She'd forged HOA board signatures on the sale documents, pocketing a $50,000 consulting fee for herself. This wasn't just petty HOA nonsense. Barb was running a straight-up scam, profiting off the neighborhood while pretending to protect it. I sat back in my chair, staring at my laptop screen, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to march to Barb's house and shove those emails in her smug face, but the bigger part, the part that had spent years building airtight cases, knew this was bigger than my garden. That strip mall would tank property values, clog our quiet streets with traffic, and turn Sunny Hills into a concrete jungle. Barb wasn't just screwing me over, she was betraying every neighbor who trusted her. And the forged signatures? That was a felony, maybe two. I felt a twist of guilt, too, for not seeing it sooner. I'd been so caught up in my grief over the Midnight Star that I'd missed the real game. Barb's arrogance, though, was her mistake. She'd left a digital trail a mile wide, and I was already downloading every email, every attachment, every damning word. Barb thought she'd buried me in the dirt of my own backyard. She had no idea I was about to dig up her entire empire. Finding out Barb was playing real estate tycoon with the neighborhood's land was like discovering a fox in the henhouse, except this fox was wearing pearls and waving an HOA rulebook. Those emails I'd pulled from Greenway Landscaping's server were gold. Proof Barb had sold a chunk of community property for a strip mall, forged signatures, and pocketed a fat consulting fee while using my rose garden as her punching bag. She thought she was untouchable, but I'd spent years dismantling scams bigger than her suburban empire. Barb wasn't just going to lose, she was going to crash and burn. All I needed was a plan, and I was already piecing one together, my laptop humming as I sipped coffee that tasted like vengeance. First, I had to lock down the evidence. I'm a cybersecurity guy. I know digital trails can vanish faster than Barb's fake smile at an HOA meeting. I backed up every email, contract, and forged document onto an encrypted drive, then stashed a copy in a cloud server only I could access. If Barb got wind of this and tried to cover her tracks, she'd be out of luck. The paper trail was ironclad, bank transfers showing her $50,000 cut, timestamps on the emails tying her to the developer, and the forged HOA approvals that screamed felony. I wasn't just building a case, I was crafting a guillotine. Next, I needed allies. Barb had turned half the neighborhood against me, whispering lies about my disruptive ways, but her strip mall scheme would hit everyone's wallets, lower property values, traffic jams, the works. I started small, reaching out to a few neighbors I knew weren't drinking Barb's Kool-Aid. There was Mike, a retired mechanic who grumbled about HOA fees every chance he got, and Sarah, a single mom who'd clashed with Barb over her kid's lemonade stand. I invited them over for coffee, showed them the emails on my laptop, and watched their jaws drop. "She's selling us out?" Mike growled, slamming his mug down. Sarah was quieter, but her eyes burned. "My son plays in that field. She can't take it." By the end of the night, they were in, ready to spread the word. I didn't need a mob, just enough voices to rattle Barb's cage. The legal angle was trickier, but I had an ace up my sleeve. My old colleague, Rachel, a financial crimes lawyer who'd owe me one since I helped her nail a crooked CEO back in the day. I called her up, laid out the evidence, and asked if she could take on Barb pro bono. Rachel laughed, that sharp laugh she saved for cases she knew she could win. Forging signatures and funneling money through fake fees? Oh, I'm in. Let's bury her in court. She agreed to draft a lawsuit to freeze the HOA's accounts and void the land sale, plus a criminal complaint for fraud. It wouldn't happen overnight, but it was a ticking bomb under Barb's throne. Finally, I wanted the court of public opinion on my side. Barb's power came from her image, Miss Perfect, guardian of Sunny Hill's harmony. Strip that away, and she'd crumble. I reached out to a local reporter, Jenna, who wrote for the Raleigh Chronicle and had a nose for small-town scandals. I sent her a teaser. "HOA president caught in corrupt land deal. Want the receipts?" She bit hard, asking for a meeting the next day. I'd hand over just enough to hook her, a few emails, a bank transfer, without tipping my full hand. If Jenna ran the story, Barb's reign would start unraveling before the lawsuit even hit. I leaned back in my chair, my plan taking shape like a chessboard in my head. Evidence secured, neighbors mobilized, legal gears turning, and a media storm brewing. Barb thought she'd crushed me when she trashed my mom's Midnight Star, but she'd only woken me up. I pictured her smug face when the first domino fell, and a grin crept across my face. "Checkmate's coming, Barb," I muttered, shutting my laptop, "and you won't see it till it's too late." With the evidence locked down and my plan in place, it was time to hit Barb where it hurt, her precious image as Sunny Hill's benevolent dictator. I'd spent years as a cybersecurity guy, unraveling scams by staying 3 steps ahead, and Barb was about to learn what happens when you underestimate someone who knows how to play dirty and smart. My strategy was a 4-pronged attack, tailored to my skills and her weaknesses. Leak the proof, rally the neighbors, light a legal fuse, and let the media do the rest. Barb thought she'd crushed me when she turned my mom's Midnight Star into mulch. Big mistake. I was coming for her crown, and I wasn't stopping until it was in pieces. I kicked things off with the evidence. Using a burner email and a VPN, tricks I'd picked up chasing digital crooks, I set up an anonymous website called Sunny Hills Secrets. Nothing fancy, just a black background and a single page with the juiciest bits. Barb's emails with the developer, the forged HOA signatures, and a bank transfer showing her $50,000 consulting fee. I didn't post everything, just enough to spark curiosity without tipping my full hand. I sent the link to every neighbor's email I could scrape from the HOA directory with a subject line that read, "Is your HOA selling you out?" By noon, my site had over 200 hits, and I could practically hear the gossip spreading through Sunny Hills cul-de-sacs. Barb's first mistake was thinking her digital tracks were invisible. My job was making sure they glowed in the dark. Next, I doubled down on the neighborhood. Mike and Sarah, my early recruits, were already working their circles, but I needed more than whispers. I organized a low-key meeting at Mike's garage, inviting a dozen neighbors who'd grumbled about Barb's reign over the years. I brought my laptop, projected the emails onto a white sheet tacked to the wall, and laid it out like a case. Barb's land deal, the strip mall, the forged documents, and how it'd tank our property values. I kept it calm, analytical, letting the evidence speak. When I mentioned my mom's rose garden, my voice caught for a second, and I saw Sarah nod, her eyes soft. That's why she went after Dien, she told the group. He wouldn't roll over. By the end, we had a plan, a petition demanding an emergency HOA meeting to vote Barb out. 20 signatures in one night, with Mike promising to get 10 more by morning. Barb's second mistake was thinking she'd turned everyone against me. Turns out loyalty in Sunny Hills wasn't as cheap as she thought. The legal front was moving, too. Rachel, my lawyer friend, filed an emergency motion in Wake County Court to freeze the HOA's accounts and halt the land sale, citing suspected fraud. She also sent a criminal complaint to the DA's office, flagging Barb's forged signatures as a felony. Rachel called me after, practically giddy. "The judge is fast-tracking the hearing," she said. "Barb's gonna have a bad week." I could have hugged my phone. The lawsuit wouldn't hit Barb yet, but it was a landmine waiting to blow. Her third mistake was assuming her HOA bylaws were bulletproof. Rachel was about to shred them like Barb shredded my roses. The final piece was the media. I met Jenna, the Raleigh Chronicle reporter, at a coffee shop downtown. She slid into the booth with a notepad and a grin, already smelling blood. I handed her a USB drive with sanitized versions of the emails, enough to prove the story without exposing my less-than-legal methods. "HOA president sells out neighborhood for profit," I said, keeping it simple. "She destroyed my garden to force me out." "It's all here." Jenna's eyes lit up as she scanned the files. "This is front-page stuff," she said, promising a story by the weekend. I leaned back, sipping my coffee, and let myself imagine Barb's face when she saw the headline. Her fourth mistake was thinking her smile could charm her way out of anything. Good luck charming a newsstand. As I drove home, the petition circulating, the website buzzing, and Rachel's lawsuit ready to drop, I felt something I hadn't in weeks: control. Barb had played her hand, betting I'd fold under her fines and dirty looks. Instead, I'd turned her game board upside down. I glanced at the empty patch where the Midnight Star used to stand, and a grim smile crossed my face. "This one's for you, Mom," I muttered. Barb's empire was cracking, and I was just getting started. The emergency HOA meeting was set for 7 p.m. in the Sunny Hills Community Center, a bland room usually reserved for book clubs and potlucks. Tonight, it was a battlefield. My petition, backed by 37 signatures, had forced the meeting, and the neighborhood was buzzing after Jenna's front-page story in the Raleigh Chronicle hit newsstands. HOA president's secret land deal exposed. I'd spent weeks building this moment, leaking emails, rallying neighbors, and arming my lawyer Rachel with a lawsuit to bury Barb. Now it was time to watch her empire crumble. I walked in with my laptop under my arm, feeling like a guy who'd just bet his entire stack on a winning hand. Barb was about to learn that her smug tablet-toting reign had an expiration date. The room was packed, standing room only, with neighbors whispering and clutching copies of Jenna's article. Barb stood at the front, her usual pearls and pantsuit in place, but her smile was tighter than a drum. I could see the cracks, her eyes darting, her hands gripping her tablet like a lifeline. Mike and Sarah sat near me, passing out printed emails from my Sunny Hills Secrets site, each one a nail in Barb's coffin. I took a deep breath, my cybersecurity instincts kicking in. Stay calm, present the evidence, let the truth do the heavy lifting. When the meeting started, I stepped up to the podium, ignoring Barb's icy glare, and plugged my laptop into the projector. The screen lit up with her emails, bank transfers, and forged HOA signatures, blown up for all to see. "Here's the deal," I said, keeping my voice steady like I was briefing a client. "Barb sold our community land to a developer for a strip mall, pocketed $50,000, and forged your signatures to do it. She destroyed my mom's rose garden, her Midnight Star, to force me out because my house was in the way. This isn't about rules, it's about greed. I clicked through the evidence, an email where Barb bragged about breaking me, a bank transfer to her personal account, a contract with a developer dated 3 months ago. The room erupted, gasps, shouts, Mrs. Jenkins yelling, "You lied to us." Barb tried to interrupt, her voice shrill. "This is slander, fabricated lies from a disgruntled resident." But I had one more slide, a photo of my ruined garden, petals scattered in the dirt. "This was my mom's legacy," I said, my throat tight. Barb knew that. She did it anyway. Sarah stood up, tears in her eyes, and shouted, "You're a disgrace!" The crowd roared agreement. Barb unraveled like a cheap sweater. She slammed her tablet down, screaming about ungrateful neighbors and legal action, but it was too late. Mike handed her a copy of her own violation notice, ripped in half, and said, "Write yourself a fine, Barb." Someone else tossed a crumpled chronicle at her feet. The room was a sea of angry faces, neighbors who'd trusted her now demanding her resignation. Jenna was there, filming it all, her camera catching every second of Barb's meltdown. By the time she stormed out, tears streaking her mascara, the crowd was chanting, "Barb must go." I stood back, letting it sink in. It wasn't just my win, it was ours. Rachel sealed the deal the next day. Her lawsuit hit the court, freezing the HOA's accounts and voiding the land sale. The DA opened a fraud investigation, and word was Barb was lawyering up fast. Her house went on the market by the weekend, priced to sell quick, and I heard she was moving to Florida, probably to terrorize some other HOA. As I left the meeting, Mike clapped me on the shoulder. "You took her down, man, like a damn sniper." I smirked, thinking of Barb's tablet, now useless. "Just another day at the office," I said, but inside I felt a weight lift. The Midnight Star was gone, but I'd fought for Mom's memory and won. Barb's reign was over, and Sunny Hills was free. The morning sun hit my backyard just right, casting a soft glow over the patch of dirt that used to be my mom's rose garden. It was early, the kind of quiet you only get in Sunny Hills before the kids start their bike races and the sprinklers kick on. I sat on my porch with a mug of coffee, the steam curling up as I watched a pair of robins peck at the fresh soil. 6 months had passed since Barb Henderson's empire went down in flames at that HOA meeting, and the neighborhood felt lighter, like it could finally breathe. Me? I was still picking up the pieces, but for the first time in a long while, it felt like I was building something instead of fighting. The rose garden was coming back, slowly but surely. After Barb's defeat, neighbors started showing up at my door, one by one, with clippings from their own yards, hybrid teas, floribundas, even a few heirlooms that must have cost a fortune. Sarah brought a cutting from her grandmother's garden, swearing it'd bloom brighter than anything Barb ever approved. Mike, the gruff mechanic, handed me a thorny stem wrapped in a paper towel and muttered, "Don't make me regret this, Carter." I didn't have the heart to tell him it was half dead already. The best gift came from Mrs. Jenkins, of all people, who'd apologized for calling me a troublemaker. She gave me a young rosebush and a sheepish smile, saying, "I was wrong about you, Den. Plant this for your mom." I did, right where the Midnight Star used to stand, and named it Justice Bloom. A little on the nose, maybe, but it felt right. I'm no gardener like Mom was, but I've got her patience and a decent pair of clippers. The new garden's not perfect, but it's mine, and every bud feels like a middle finger to Barb's reign. Sunny Hills itself was healing too. The HOA was gone, replaced by a volunteer council that met over pizza and actually listened. I got roped into helping with the bylaws, mostly because folks figured a guy who could take down Barb with a laptop might know a thing or two about transparency. I kept it simple: no fines without a vote, no land sales without consent, and absolutely no tablet-wielding tyrants. The neighborhood threw a block party last month, and I swear half the toasts were to Den, the guy who saved us from the strip mall. I just grinned and raised my beer, thinking how Barb would have hated the paper plates and unapproved lawn chairs. Word was she'd fled to a condo in Florida, probably terrorizing some poor retiree community with her clipboard. Good riddance. Her old house sold at a loss, and I heard the new owners painted it bright yellow just to spite her aesthetic standards. Couldn't have happened to a nicer despot. I took a sip of coffee, my eyes drifting to Justice Bloom. It was still small, but its first buds were peeking out, a deep red that reminded me of Mom's laugh when she'd get dirt on her nose. That garden was more than plants, it was her lessons, her stubborn belief that beauty could grow through cracks. Barb tried to take that from me, but she didn't know who she was up against. I'm a cybersecurity guy, a puzzle solver, the kind of person who doesn't quit when the stakes are personal. Taking her down wasn't just about saving my house or the neighborhood. It was about keeping Mom's memory alive, proving that her Midnight Star wasn't just a rose, but a legacy worth fighting for. I stood, brushing off my jeans, and grabbed my pruning shears. The robins scattered as I knelt by Justice Bloom, checking for aphids like Mom taught me. "This one's for you," I whispered, clipping a stray leaf. A neighbor waved from across the street, inviting me to yet another barbecue, Sunny Hill's new favorite pastime. I smirked, thinking my only HOA problem now was too many burgers and not enough weekends. The garden wasn't back to its old glory yet, but it was growing, just like me, and that, I figured, was victory enough.